Well, I guess I get to get it right. I got Ari Meisel with me today. Ari is the founder of Less Doing, productivity expert, author, advocate for optimized living. So, I want to learn all about that. Ari, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Doing great. Thank you for having me.
That's awesome. So our show is like, we're really focused around the plight of the marketing agency owner and the SaaS business owner. And, these guys are entrepreneurs. And I know you work with a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners. Um, what in a nutshell is uh, Ari doing to help these guys out, and what is Les doing?
So, Less Doing started originally as a personal productivity system that I created out of basically out of a health crisis that I had experienced, and it was really focused on getting as much done in as little time as possible. Over the years, that's evolved into more of a business and team focused methodology that I refer to as the replaceable founder. So basically, the idea is I help make entrepreneurs more replaceable by creating systems and processes, helping them to automate and ultimately outsource and delegate a lot of the things that they don't need to do so that they can focus on the things that they do best and use their time the most effectively.
Nice, man. I think that's the need of the hour right now. Because we end up
Seems to
creating
be.
jobs for ourselves. I've done that, Ari, for myself. I ran my agency in Calgary, Canada, for the last 15 years. And for the most of it, I was just a one-man band operation. I was doing sales, I was doing marketing, I was doing the whole circle every single month. And, initially it was lots of fun, but then it became exhausting, man. And, it's the same hustle every time. And I just couldn't grow it beyond a certain point because of those limitations. So I think that's where and then, it's a completely different situation with the startup that we're in right now, where all of a sudden we're responsible for 200 people. And I think if I can tie it down to one thing, is because I'm not doing most of it. Most of it is done by someone else or systems and processes.
Well, there's that expression, right? What got you here is not going to get you there. And the problem for a lot of people with entrepreneurial businesses, especially ones that grow quickly, is that you'll see people who are doing, $1 to $3 million or 3 to 10 million, but they are still acting as if they're running a $300,000 a year company,
Hmm.
doing all the same things that they had to do at that point. Which legitimately, at that point, you do have to do all the things, but at some point, you have to grow out of that. And the idea about being replaceable is we don't want to replace people. We want to make you more replaceable so that you can be replaced up, not out of the organization, for everybody, not just
Hmm.
the founder.
So replace up, right? So you work yourself, you kind of start doing, I guess if I'm getting this right, is my understanding of what you just said is that if you're in a role, you should be really working yourself out of that job by automating and delegating.
Yeah, exactly. And I see, the methodology, the overarching sort of framework for me is optimize, automate, outsource in that order. And I think that a lot of people outsource first, and that's a real problem. That's a lot of time. That's why almost everybody who's ever outsourced something has had a bad experience outsourcing something, right? Because if you try to take an inefficient problem and give it to somebody else who has less experience and less know-how than you, but you're
Yeah.
at the same time expecting them to do a better job than you, it's like setting everybody up for failure. So I always say we have to look at optimizing what we have first, then automating, and now we can automate so much that we
Hmm.
couldn't before. And
Hmm.
whatever's left over at that point, that's when you look at delegating, because at that point you actually can get somebody engaged in the work and you can empower them to
Hmm.
really be effective.
Yeah, I love how you put that, man. Optimize, automate, and then delegate. And usually we do the opposite of that, right? Like as soon as we get overwhelmed, we're like, hey, let me get somebody else in. But little do we know that that person is going to come into the same system, and they're going to get overwhelmed just like you. And they're going to get burnt out. And I've seen that from time to time. You may even have a great optimized system in it, and if it's not automated, Ari, the person is still going to get burnt out because you have an optimized system, but it's same repetition over and over again. For example, case in point is our recruiters who are screening 1,500, 2,000 resumes a month. If they're doing it manually, they're gonna get burnt out. So now what we've done is that we've automated that by AI going through those resumes, and then automating that process where these appointments, the first interviews can automatically be booked in through our CRM system and things like that, or our recruitment system. And then, yes, when we bring in that person, the recruiter, they're going to have a lot more fun recruiting for us, because they don't have to screen 2,000 resumes so I think that's amazing, man. That is perfectly, really well put, because we do understand these things: optimize, automate, and delegate, but we don't realize that there's an order to these as well.
Right. Yeah. And hiring is a big one, by the way. Is I had a virtual assistant company before. I hired 183 people in 6 months using an automated process that I built, and now I'm doing that for a number of other organizations. So recruiting is a very big area where automation has a huge role. But yeah, people were just manually going through everything before. It also helps keep people objective, right? Because you see the same resumes over and over, and it becomes like mind-numbingly boring at some point. So recruiters should be almost like sales, right? Like their job should be getting more people applying that produce good results, right? So it's almost like lead gen and everything for customers, but you're doing it for recruiting.
Yeah, totally, totally. Great insights, Ari. Ari, without any further ado, I'd like to get into our three more questions section. And I'll start off with my first question for you. What led you to develop less doing, and how did it impact you once you had the system in place? How did it really impact you personally, on a personal side and also on your professional side?
So basically, when I was 23 years old, I got diagnosed with Crohn's disease, which is a chronic inflammatory condition that's considered to be incurable. And separate story, I mean, I overcame that illness, but the short term was that I went from working 18 hours a day to working an hour a day. And most of the productivity, or actually all the productivity systems out there that I was aware of, and really somewhat like more so now as well, there's not so much focus on like, you only have an hour a day, what are you going to get done? And that's what my focus was. Most of them are just about like, how can we get more organized? How can we get more done in the time we have, which is not quite the same issue. When you tell someone you only have an hour a day to work, what would you do? The question at that point isn't really what would you do, it's what wouldn't you do? And if the things that you wouldn't do still need to get done, then who or what is going to do them for you? So that health crisis is really what led to me creating the productivity system that would become less doing. And in terms of the impact, it's everything. I mean, I have 5 small children now, from 12 years old down to 13 months, that I'm very involved with every one of them and everything that they do. And I still am a business coach, privately coaching 24 people in multiple time zones around the world. I'm involved in several different local organizations, and I even find time to work on a hobby, which is woodworking every now and then. So, and I think I'm probably in some of the best shape of my life, actually. So it's really affected everything.
I love it, man. I love it. That's a great answer, and we're all intrigued about less doing as well. And I think like what you're talking about is definitely making sense. We'll get into how we can learn more. But here's my next question. Um, you mentioned on your LinkedIn profile of running for office to drive transformative changes inside your community. Like, how did that become part of the picture, right? Going from that 23, getting diagnosed, and then becoming this coach and being an amazing human being. And now you're also thinking about this big challenge. How does that fit in? And what did less doing, how did they play a part, or your system played a part in making that happen for you?
So I'm currently planning on running for the school board here where we live in Princeton. And a lot of that, I mean, it's a couple things. One is that I am very lucky that I can make the time to focus on the things that I find important. But also the reason that I find it so important is that I have 5 small children that are involved in the school district. I'm going to be in the school district for the next 18 years at least. So
Hmm.
I'm not the kind of person that likes to like sit by the sidelines.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that most government bodies and organizations aren't exactly often associated with efficiency and effectiveness,
Hmm.
whether or not they're getting good things done or not. So I'm hoping that I can sort of bring that lens to
Hmm.
the way things work.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic way of thinking about it, and I think really the reason we put the question in there was to get your mindset on when you are doing something. We all the parents that we know, we're already going to be doing these things. We're going to be, like you said, standing on the sidelines. Is there a way to be being more engaging and kind of give back a little bit as well? And love how you've kind of tied everything in together with what you got going on personally. Here's my last question for you, Ari. Uh, how, Again, you also volunteer for EMT. So how does that work? Like finding, first of all, time for being an EMT, and then what influenced that approach for you to kind of volunteer like that?
So I've been an EMT for about 14 years now. So the health crisis was the initial impetus that got me interested in doing that and learning or gaining that knowledge essentially. And so I've worked with a bunch of different organizations over the years. But now that we're here in Princeton and we've been here for several years, I've become the vice president of the Princeton First Aid and Rescue Squad, which is a nonprofit organization. So I deal with a lot of the day-to-day and different responsibilities that come along with that, along with the rest of the senior leadership team there. And then as an EMT, I volunteer one night a week. So I work overnight, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. and, get to help people in crises. It's something that I'm very passionate about. It's something that it's been a really big part of my life for a long time. And something that is a big part of my identity. I do a lot of educational stuff too. So I work with the
Nice.
school district and local organizations to teach them different emergency medical skills.
Man, that's very exciting. And I think, like, yeah, I've spoken to a lot of people over the years, over the last 2 years, we've been doing this podcast. And this is like really inspiring. And, everything that you talk about, there's just leading by example is a big part of that stuff. So, and stuff that's important to you in your life, health, fitness, we can see that as you talk. So this the EMT example that you gave us just fits perfectly and shows us that there's a way of building your life up that can be really, really productive, and you can be all in every single day, and in your case sometimes doing a graveyard shift as well.
Exactly. The other thing is that if you want to learn how to handle stress really well, being an EMT definitely helps.
Mm, yeah. Great point. All right, let's move on to our three more ideas, Ari. So I'm going to throw out some phrases, and let's get your fast answers on that. Global teams and delegation.
Yeah, so the very first thing is communication. I think that that's where most businesses fail is having poor communication systems set up. We're not just talking about words and language. It really is about the methods. Are you using Slack for this type of communication? Are you using email? Are you
Mm,
using WhatsApp? Whatever it might be, for the
mm,
different kinds of communication. And then when you're dealing with projects and tasks and delegation, you should never, in my opinion, use a communication platform. You need to be using a project management platform like a Trello or a ClickUp or something like
mm,
that, because that's what they're designed for. And otherwise, what ends up happening is you just have jumbles of conversations that make no sense and things get lost in the fray. So I've had a team of almost 200 people in 17 time zones at one point, and you really have to have good, solid systems that you stick to. And honestly, most of the time, it's the CEO that doesn't stick to it. They're the ones that are like, "Oh, I need to talk to this person, so I'm just going to email them," and then they didn't get back to me, so now I'm going to text them. And they didn't get back to me there, so now I'm going to ask somebody else to get in touch with them, and it just becomes this like firefight, right? So
yeah.
the good CEOs are the ones that, or the good leaders are the ones that respect people's time.
Yeah. Yeah. And you gotta, if you're an agency owner and you're listening to this, let's look at ourselves and ask that questions to ourselves. And I was laughing when I was explaining that person because I've been that person, right? And I'll be
So that
honest, right? And sometimes I still might be. My team might say something else, but I've learned to, what Ari calls the good CEO. So I'm trying to be a good boy here, but it's hard, and I get it. But that's why you want to work with a coach like Ari, right? Bring in those systems and processes so that we can become a great leader while respecting boundaries. And then I think like what you mentioned, especially on the global perspective, because a lot of our team members are global. I think like I cannot stress how it's already important because everyone's gone remote all of a sudden. But in the marketing, I think world, we were already familiar with working remotely, but now it's a no brainer for everyone. But now when you take that to global scale, communications and using the right project management tools, that's become even more important now, because now you're bringing in someone with a different culture who's supposed to kind of keep pace with us here in the US and Canada. And it's not going to be easy if we're not effectively communicating, training, and making sure they have the systems and processes, because otherwise, you can do, if you be yourself and bring them into your chaos, they're going to have a high chances of failure, and we're going to just blame that, hey, VAs don't work, or global remote employees don't work out and things like that. It's usually our fault. And I think really great put, communications, and do it properly, and be a good CEO. All right. So next one is health and well-being.
Yeah. Um, I think that a lot of times people forget that at the end of the day, like, we're biology, right? And there's, no matter how many systems you have in place, or automations, or delegation abilities, or whatever productivity tips and tricks and hacks you want to use, they're going to be limited by your ability to interact with them, right? Which is going to depend on your sleep and your diet, and really your stress levels. The less doing system productivity really was born out of a need to deal with stress, and stress in my case was causing a chronic illness. So control, in my opinion, is the antidote to stress many times. And that means
Hmm.
control over your inbox. Inbox zero is actually a really important skill, in my opinion.
Hmm.
And a lot of
Hmm.
people don't have it. And it's something we definitely can manage, because it has to do with decision making, not just your email. Um,
Hmm.
and then optimization, the optimized automated outsource optimization, is really about tracking a lot of times, and identification, and looking at what a process looks like, or looking at what your biomarkers look like. It's information that we have, data that we can have, that some people do have, but they don't necessarily do much with it. So
Hmm.
I'm very data driven in a lot of things that I do, and uh, we have to know what we're optimizing and what for, a lot of
Hmm.
times. So I look at health and wellness as any other kind of machine that needs tinkering.
Nice. Nice. That's part of our day-to-day routines, and our peak performances come through when we're feeling best and optimized. And like you said, track the hell out of everything, because
Mm.
if you need something to happen, you better be tracking it. All right. So my last phrase for you, Ari, is productive entrepreneur.
So this is, I might be stealing this from Tim Ferriss, but he said that, the difference, productivity is producing more, efficiency is producing more with less, and being effective is producing the right things. And so for me, I'm always more focused on people being as effective as possible, right? Doing the right
Hmm.
things, making the right things, going in the right directions, creating the right resources. So it's not always just about producing more. Certainly that might be a downstream effect of having better systems in place, but the
Hmm.
goal should be to be effective, right?
Hmm.
So I like I said, I have about 24 clients around the world that I work one-on-one with, and
Hmm.
I probably spend about 20 minutes a day doing that, which makes no sense when I tell people that, but I do it asynchronously using an app called Voxer. So it's not about me doing more hours of coaching, right? It really is about giving people the right information when they need it and where they need it. So instead of a 45-minute conversation, I can give somebody the 90-second answer that they need to make the right
Hmm.
decision.
Nice, man. I like that. Being effective. Now that changes the game completely, because now you can do the stuff that you've been doing traditionally, and you can just squeeze it into a 20-minute, the way you're doing it right now, right? So and I can tell you that, if you've been with coaches, and I've been working with coaches as well, and sometimes it's really hard to make time for that call once a week or whatever that is, as busy entrepreneurs, right?
Right.
So you basically, being effective lets you focus on having a great end result. That's what we're after. The mechanism can change, and I think that's what it's giving you the ability of doing. So very well put, Ari. I love it. How does somebody engage you if somebody wants to work with Ari?
So everything is at lessdoing.com. But since I do the 99% of my communication over Voxer, I actually have voxwithari.com. And anybody can go to that, voxwithari.com, and they can get in touch with me on Voxer. And what's nice, it's not going to be a VA, it's not an automation. You will hear my voice, and I will be answering you personally. And I really welcome people to reach out.
Awesome. Ari, thanks a lot for doing this, man. I really appreciate it. Letsdoing.com. Check out Ari. I'm definitely checking out Ari, and we'll talk to you next time. Thanks, Ari.
Have me.